In the summer of 1944, Lieutenant Colonel James Mitchell watched through his binoculars at the Norman Hills when a sharp whistle cut through the air. Seconds later, a devastating explosion swept through his command post, instantly killing 3 of his officers. It hadn't been an 88mm cannon, nor a Panzer, nor any of the threats that American military manuals had meticulously catalogued. It was something far more primitive, and paradoxically far more lethal: a German 5.9-inch mortar fired from over 2 miles away. Mitchell had just experienced firsthand the weapon that would completely redefine Allied artillery doctrine. The Germans had transformed a centuries-old technology into a revolutionary war machine, and the Allies were completely unprepared to face it. The Allied obsession with German technological superiority had created a fatal blind spot. While American military intelligence spent incalculable resources analyzing every bolt of Tiger tanks and every circuit of Würzburg radars, German mortars operated in the shadows, invisible to the eyes of strategists. General Omar Bradley would later admit in his memoirs, "We spent months studying their concrete fortifications and completely ignored their mud weapons. This strategic myopia was not accidental. It was the result of a military mindset that equated sophistication with effectiveness. The Germans, facing resource shortages and constant bombing of their factories, had been forced to seek more elegant solutions. What they discovered would change the face of artillery warfare forever." In 1943, Oberst Heinrich Müller received a seemingly impossible mission: to develop a fire support system that could be produced quickly, transported easily, and operated by soldiers with minimal training. German factories were being bombed daily, steel was scarce, and skilled labor was being sent to the Eastern Front. Müller, a World War I veteran who had witnessed the devastating power of French mortars at Verdun, saw an opportunity where others saw limitations. Working with a team of just 12 engineers in an underground bunker in the Bavarian Alps, he began to completely redesign the concept of mortar warfare. What would emerge from his calculations would not just be a weapon, but an entirely new military philosophy. The 5.9-inch Granatwerfer 43 that came off Müller's drawing boards defied all military conventions of the time. Weighing only 1,200 pounds, less than half of a conventional cannon of similar caliber, it could be disassembled into 4 pieces and transported by a 6-man team across terrain impossible for traditional artillery. But its true revolution lay in its ammunition. While Allied cannons relied on high-velocity projectiles that followed predictable trajectories, German mortars launched their bombs in towering arcs, allowing them to hit targets completely protected by hills, buildings, or fortifications. Sergeant Hans Weber, a Stalingrad veteran, described in his diary, "It's like having the hand of God. We can reach anywhere we can see, and many places we can't." The math was simple, but the psychological impact was devastating. The first real test of the new German mortar doctrine came in September 1943 during the defense of Salerno. American Captain Robert Hayes commanded an infantry company that had established a seemingly impenetrable position atop a rocky hill, protected on 3 sides by steep cliffs. His men felt secure. No tank could climb those slopes, and German artillery had no direct line of sight. Then, at 4:47 a.m., hell literally rained down from the sky. In 15 minutes, 205 9-inch mortar rounds transformed their fortified position into a field of smoking craters. Hayes lost 60% of his men without even seeing where the shots came from. "It was as if the very air had become our enemy," he would later write. The Germans had discovered how to make any position vulnerable, no matter how well defended. The initial Allied response was characterized by a toxic mix of arrogance and incomprehension. General George Patton, upon receiving the first reports on the effectiveness of German mortars, reportedly declared, "Mortars are weapons for cowards. American soldiers fight face to face." This mentality permeated the entire Allied command. American training manuals dedicated 47 pages to identifying German tanks and only 3 paragraphs to mortars. Meanwhile, the Germans were producing 400 mortars a month in underground factories, training specialized teams, and developing tactics that would turn every German soldier into a mobile artillery threat. The disparity in preparation was stark. Where the Allies saw an auxiliary weapon, the Germans saw the future of infantry warfare. The brutal awakening came during Operation Market Garden in September 1944. British airborne troops trapped in Arnhem discovered that their safe positions in solid masonry buildings offered zero protection against German mortars. Major John Frost, commanding the 2nd Parachute Battalion, recorded in his report, "In 3 hours, they reduced our fortified school to rubble using only mortars. We didn't see a single German tank." The numbers were terrifying. 78% of British casualties in Arnhem were caused by mortar fire. Each 33-pound bomb carried enough explosives to demolish a 2-foot-thick brick wall. The Germans had turned urban geometry into their ally, using the buildings themselves as amplifiers for their explosions. The true genius of the German system lay not just in the weapons, but in the tactical doctrine that accompanied them. While the Allies operated their mortars as static artillery, the Germans developed the concept of Feuerwanderung, migratory fire. German mortar teams could fire a devastating salvo and then move to a new position in less than 3 minutes, making them virtually impossible to locate and counterattack. Lieutenant Franz Steiner, an instructor at the Grafenwehr Mortar School, explained to his students, "You are not artillerymen, you are ghosts carrying thunder." This extreme mobility meant that a single German mortar unit could simulate the presence of an entire artillery battery, psychologically multiplying its actual strength by a factor of 10. During the winter of 1943-44, an accidental discovery would reveal the full extent of German innovation. British Lieutenant William Crawford, a demolition expert, was examining unexploded German mortar bombs when he noticed something extraordinary. The Germans had developed rudimentary proximity fuses using captured radio components. These fuses caused the bombs to explode 15 feet above the ground, creating a fragmentation pattern that was lethal within a 100-yard radius. "They took our own technology and turned it against us in a way we never imagined," Crawford reported to command. Even more disturbing was the discovery that the Germans were producing special chemical ammunition for mortars, smoke bombs that not only obscured vision, but carried tear gas agents that forced Allied soldiers to abandon protected positions. The turning point in Allied perception came through an accidental discovery in December 1944. During the Battle of the Bulge, American troops captured a complete German training manual on mortar tactics. The document, translated by Captain David Eisenberg, a Harvard mathematics professor before the war, revealed the shocking extent of German sophistication. The Germans had developed ballistic tables that allowed firing calculations in seconds, observation techniques that turned any soldier into an effective artillery observer, and coordination methods that synchronized mortar attacks with surgical precision. "They turned a science into an art," Eisenberg reported to command. While we were still thinking of mortars as small cannons, they had already completely reinvented the concept of fire support. The detailed analysis of the manual revealed tactics that seemed straight out of a modern guerrilla warfare handbook. The Germans had developed the concept of ghost mortars, two-man teams carrying light 2-inch mortars who could establish firing positions on rooftops, church towers, or even in bomb craters. These teams operated completely independently, using simple radio codes to coordinate simultaneous attacks that created the illusion of massive bombardments. American Sergeant Mike O'Brien, who survived one of these coordinated attacks in Bastogne, described the experience. "It felt like we were being attacked by an entire artillery division. Only later did we find out it was just 6 men with small mortars scattered around the town." This radical decentralization of firepower represented a revolution in military doctrine that the Allies would take years to fully comprehend. Parallel to tactical development, the Germans had revolutionized mortar production through methods that anticipated modern manufacturing. In underground factories in the Austrian Alps, they developed assembly lines that could produce a complete mortar in just 4 hours, using recycled steel from destroyed vehicles and standardized components that allowed for quick field repairs. Chief Engineer Fritz Kellner had created a system where 80% of the parts were interchangeable between different mortar models, allowing a single maintenance team to repair any weapon in the German line. "We weren't just making weapons," Kellner would explain in post-war interrogations. "We were creating a system that could adapt and evolve faster than the enemy could respond." This modular design philosophy allowed for rapid modifications based on battlefield feedback, creating a cycle of innovation that kept the Germans always one step ahead. The Allied response, when it finally came, was characteristic of their industrial approach to warfare, mass production, and numerical superiority. In January 1945, American factories received orders to produce 2,000 4.2-inch mortars per month, 5 times the total German production. But numbers told only part of the story. Colonel William Murphy, in charge of the accelerated mortar training program, discovered that replicating German effectiveness required more than simply copying their weapons. They had a decades head start in doctrine, he observed. It wasn't enough to have the mortars, we needed to relearn how to think about infantry warfare. The intensive training program that followed transformed 50,000 American soldiers into mortar specialists in just 6 weeks, an impressive logistical feat that demonstrated both Allied industrial capacity and the belated recognition of this weapon's importance. The first mass-produced American mortars arrived in Europe in March 1945, but they came accompanied by a typically American innovation: radar-guided ammunition. Working with Bell Laboratories, the American Army had developed mortar bombs that could be guided in flight using low-power radar signals. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hayes, the same officer who had survived the Salerno attack, now commanded the first unit equipped with these smart mortars. It was like having precision artillery that fit in a soldier's backpack, he reported. In their first combat tests during the Rhine crossing, American guided mortars achieved 95% accuracy on targets 2 miles away, finally overcoming the German tactical advantage through technological superiority. But the war would end before this technology could be widely implemented. The psychological impact of German mortars extended far beyond the physical casualties they caused. Medical reports from the end of the war revealed that 30% of combat fatigue cases among Allied troops were directly related to the stress caused by mortar bombardments. Dr. Roy Grinker, a military psychiatrist who treated hundreds of traumatized soldiers, observed, "Mortars created a unique type of terror. Unlike artillery, which you could hear coming, or tanks, which you could see, mortars appeared out of nowhere. They turned any place into a potentially deadly location." This unintentional psychological warfare forced the Allies to develop new treatment techniques for combat trauma, including group therapies that help soldiers process the experience of invisible attacks. The medical legacy of this mortar warfare would influence PTSD treatment for decades. Post-war analysis revealed that the Germans had achieved something remarkable. With limited resources and under constant bombardment, they had created a weapon system that multiplied their combat effectiveness by a factor of 5. Each German mortar, operated by a 3-man team, had the firepower equivalent to a 6-gun artillery battery operated by 36 men. This efficiency was not just the result of superior engineering, but of a deep understanding of how modern warfare was evolving. German General Heinz Guderian, in his post-war memoirs, explained, "We realized that future warfare would be decided not by who had the biggest weapons, but by who could apply lethal force more quickly and flexibly." This philosophy would influence German military development for decades, culminating in the mobile warfare doctrine that would characterize modern conflicts. When silence finally descended upon Europe in May 1945, the German mortar revolution had left an indelible mark on global military doctrine. Post-war statistics revealed a disturbing truth. Mortars had caused 40% of all Allied infantry casualties in the European theater, more than tanks, aviation, and conventional artillery combined. General Dwight Eisenhower, in his final analysis of the war, wrote, "If we had understood from the beginning what the Germans had achieved with their mortars, we could have shortened the war by months." But perhaps more important than the numbers was the strategic lesson. The Germans proved that tactical innovation could overcome material advantages, and that the greatest military revolutions often came from rethinking existing weapons, not inventing new ones. The legacy of German mortars echoes through modern conflicts, from the mountains of Afghanistan to the cities of Iraq. Today, when modern military forces face insurgents equipped with improvised mortars, the lessons learned in the hills of Normandy resonate. That adaptability and tactical innovation can neutralize seemingly insurmountable technological advantages. The story of German mortars remains a testament to the power of the human mind to transform limitations into advantages, and to the importance of constantly questioning our own assumptions about military superiority. In a world where military technology advances exponentially, the German lesson of 1944 remains relevant. Sometimes the most devastating weapon is the one no one sees coming.